Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. There are people who are not even bothered by the fact that they're on private property. Yeah, some people. Here we go. Entitled people tell me to F off in my own yard. A few years ago, I lived in a house that was a block away from a public park. It was a very large park, and I noticed 2 soccer games occurring when I left one Saturday to go to the grocery store. When I returned home about 45 minutes later, I noticed there was a truck parked beside my property. The occupants of that truck were on my property. There was 2 children dressed in soccer uniforms, their mom and dad, and a large Doberman. The Doberman was lying on a picnic blanket, the parents were setting up their family's picnic lunch, and the children were chasing each other, all on my front lawn. I couldn't believe my eyes. I pulled my car into my driveway and walked over to the family, asking them why they were on my property. The entitled mother then snarked at me, "What does it look like? We're eating lunch." I asked why they're not eating in the public park that's a block away, and she responded, "It's more peaceful here." In complete shock, I then said, "This is private property, and you all need to leave now." The mother's response was, "Go F yourself, you little bee." I was furious. I pay the mortgage, I do all the lawn work, and you think it's okay to trespass and tell me where to go on my own property? So this was the easiest revenge ever. I walked right beside them to the outside tap that was attached to my sprinkler system and turned it on. The family started screaming and grabbed all their stuff as they ran to their truck. The mother and father screamed obscenities the whole time and said that they were going to get me. Well, this is where revenge number 2 came in. I downloaded my security camera footage, which showed their license plate, and brought it to my next-door neighbor, who just happened to be a police officer working that day. The parents were charged with trespassing, and I had a smile on my face for the rest of the day. Thank you for caring about their hygiene. Sounds like their mouths could have done with a washout, too. Never discuss body fat, even if it's your job, apparently. I'm currently a researcher and I'll be starting school soon to get my PhD. But before this job and after years of serving my time as a waitress, I worked at a gym. This was during my undergrad years when I worked at the campus gym that was frequented by both students and the general community. After a year or so as a fitness slave, read enforcing dress code, cleaning sweaty equipment, and generally keeping the order, I was promoted to a specialist, which I can totally vouch for since my current position is also a specialist. But I digress. My promotion was to sit in the basement during certain times of the day and run people through our pod machine that calculated body fat and non-fat percentage. It also told you based on your age where you fell in the general population and also on a health scale. This wasn't BMI, so it fell on a different scale that I had to explain to people. It was such an easy job, it was actually a little ridiculous. Most of my time was spent studying and waiting. I never did the scheduling myself. The main office would take the calls, take payments over the phone, and then tell me to come in during the time the person wants to come be measured. The pod was located in the basement of the gym, and when the person arrived, the front desk would direct them to me. Simple, right? Not for 99% of the people, I guess. So one fine day, I was in the basement waiting for a couple who had scheduled together. Guy and girl in their mid-30s. The guy showed up a few minutes before the appointment with no problems, said his girlfriend was on the way. 15 minutes passes and there's no sign of her. He's calling and calling, but no answer. 20 minutes is our deadline, otherwise we have to reschedule. Finally, 25 minutes later, she shows up and immediately starts screaming at me that I somehow made her late because I didn't tell her the right directions and the front desk didn't know where my office was and blah blah. All these things not my fault. I apologized for the confusion and also said that we can still run the session today even though the max time passed. Wrong answer. More screaming commences about how dare I even think about canceling on me. It's your fault anyway. Holy crap, calm down, lady. I apologize again and take them to the back to change. You need to be in a swimsuit to be in this thing. The guy isn't saying much this entire time, and the girl's just continuing to make snide remarks. The guy goes first, and the total time is about 5 to 7 minutes. He gets out, I read his results, life goes on, then the girl goes. She starts out by bitching how I left her in the hallway in her underwear. I told her to change and come right into the pod room after she'd changed. Through the hallway, only the three of us have access to. I tried explaining that, but it clearly wasn't working. More yelling starts with how stupid I am and how she doesn't appreciate being stared at by random people passing by. Okay, lady, you're in a swimsuit in a hallway that only I have access to with no windows. What? After she's done her rant and me apologizing for things I didn't do, she finally gets into the pod. 5 to 7 minutes of quiet and the guy staring into space. She gets out, gets dressed, and comes in to read her results. I show her the printout with her body fat percentage and where she falls on the health scale. She fell somewhere around 15%, which is almost dangerous, but normal for athletes and still very low for women. Thinking this is a good thing, I report the news. Wrong again. She starts to glare into my soul and quietly says, "Are you calling me fat?" I was completely stunned since this is an incredibly low body weight for a woman, and plus, come on, I'm just reporting what the machine said. This was the following exchange. Me, no ma'am, I'm actually saying you're close to being under the recommended body fat percentage for women. You're in the same category of athletes. Lady, no, you called me fat. You said I'm 15% fat. Me, yes, your body fat is at 15%. Everyone has body fat. You need like 12% as a woman just to function, to remain alive. Lady, stop calling me fat. I'm not fat. You're the one that's fat. Okay, what? Where'd that come from? Yes, I'm about 20 pounds overweight, but oh my God, what did I do to deserve that? Me, ma'am, I'm sorry you're upset, but I don't appreciate the name calling. Like I said, you're in very good shape in terms of body fat percentage, and you fall in the best category you can get while not being in danger. Lady, they shouldn't even let fat people work at the gym. You're too fat to work at a gym. How dare you call me fat when you're a effing fatty? Holy crap, this lady's insane. I'm too shocked to do anything? The guy's just sitting there and she tries to get him to agree to say that I'm calling her fat. He just shrugs and I tell them it's time to leave now. She screamed at me all the way out the door about how fat I was and how she's not fat. Eventually they leave and I am in tears. The equipment room ladies comfort me and I write the entire story to my managers and fill out an incident report. The lady ended up writing to the gym to tell them how disrespectful I was and how I called her fat and mocked her standing in her underwear for the entire gym to see. She also commented how they shouldn't employ people who don't represent what the gym's all about, i.e. I'm too fat to work there. The manager wrote back and chewed her out and placed a lifetime ban on her account. The good ending was a few months later. I got a position as a research assistant in a lab and proceeded to leave my pod days behind. The position ended up turning into my current position as my boss hired me to run the lab full-time after graduation. And our last story. Make him join my HOA. A good friend of mine about 4 years ago inherited a house from his grandparents. He decided to live there for the time being till he decided what to do with the house. He grew up in it, so he didn't really want to sell it. Not even a week after he moved in, he got a visit from a neighborhood committee. They said they are the 3 board members of the HOA and are here so he can sign his membership papers. They were extremely nosy and rude. For example, one tried to get into the garage without so much as asking. When he stopped him and asked him where he wanted to go, he had the audacity to say, "I need to check your garage. If everything there is in order, I have a right to do this bi-weekly, and denying me access is an offense that will cost a fine." He then had enough of the audacity and kicked them out of the house. While doing so, one of the board members shoved some papers into his face and told him he needed to sign this right now. He would live there a week already, and his papers had to be signed before moving in. Once they were gone, he took a look at the papers. They were effing ridiculous and gave the HOA rights that were simply un-effing real. They had, for example, a right to visit your home bi-weekly and check things like that you do not use the garage for storage, don't have gasoline on containers in your garage. Same goes for gas. You had to mow your lawn every week. Snow had to be shoveled every 2 hours when it snowed, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. You could not park more than 1 car on your grounds, except inside the garage, and a ton of other bullcrap. A few days later, they came back and asked him why he did not sign the papers yet. They also wanted to check the garage again. This time, he would not even let them in. He told them he would never become a member of their stupid club. To them, that meant war. Within a week, they sent him fines north of $1,000, several of which were for denying them access to his home, each worth $250. My friend simply did not take them serious and used their stupid letters to help fire his grill. Then came the day where they went extremely too far. He came back and one of the board members had broken into his garage, stood in it, and was writing things down on his notepad. But that was not even the worst part. He had 2 wonderful oak trees in front of the house. They had been planted by his great-grandparents when they were newlyweds and moved into the house. The HOA was in the process of taking them down. They had called a professional crew for this one. One was already so damaged, basically all twigs were already down. It was just a stump that was left. The other one they had just started with. He effing lost it. He told the tree crew to stop right the F now and explained to them he was the owner and what they did was highly illegal. They had no idea, since the board member claimed these trees were in violation of the rules since supposedly too many leaves went to the neighbor's garden. He told them that there was no legal reason to put them down, but the board member claimed I had given my okay because the trees were in violation of rules of the HOA. He looked it up later. They actually had a bylaw that if a garden produces more than one 40-liter sack of leaves within 2 weeks, the garden owner needs to take down the offending trees within 2 weeks. He told them he would overlook them trespassing if they would be witnesses in court for him. Then he called the cops on the board members for trespassing, breaking and entering. They actually had used a bolt cutter to get into the garage. He'd always closed it with a big effing bike lock after they'd tried to get in twice before. The process must have been glorious. Not only did they have to repay him for the lock and the tree, which was worth a crap ton of money, north of $50,000 if I remember right, plus damages for the second tree. He had a professional tree person look after it, so all the damage healed properly, which alone cost over $1,000. But these idiots actually thought the trial would have been unfair and tried to fight it, which probably cost them an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in lawyer and court costs. All in all, this trial must have cost them over $120,000. Then he went to yet another civil court and sued them for emotional damage. He told them how much these trees meant to him since his great-grandparents had planted them with seeds from the home country. He really laid it on as thick as he could. Plus, he felt threatened by the HOA and could hardly sleep because he always fears they'll try to get into his house. The court actually bought it and gave him $500,000 plus the cost for a state-of-the-art alarm system so he can feel safe again in his own home. So put it all together, he cost the HOA nearly $750,000. They had to file for bankruptcy and get a person to check the books so my friend would get his money. The best is for last. The mediator found out that these 3 jerks had been defrauding the HOA for well over 10 years and were giving out as many fines as they possibly could so they could use it to bolster their income. All 3 had to sell their houses so they could pay out my friend. Now he's, for most people, one of the favorite people living there, and he constantly gets invited over for grilling and whatnot. You see, most people never wanted the HOA in the first place, but the board members practically forced them to sign the contract, claiming it would not be optional, and if they did not sign before moving in, it would be a $500 fine. Only 6 of the over 50 members actually wanted this HOA. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.